They really should have called this one the New Leaf Cup. The Crossing Cup was an addition to the second half of the DLC tracks that were added to Mario Kart 8 roughly a year after its release date. I feel like most people know this one as the Animal Crossing Cup, so Crossing Cup makes sense. But in the broader casual gaming sphere, I've heard people refer to this one as the Green Leaf Cup, the Other Leaf Cup, and of course some people just called it the Leaf Cup, leading to many a mix-up with the actual Leaf Cup. I'm not going to go out of my way to say that the Crossing Cup is a bad choice. I mean, it's based off of Animal Crossing. Why wouldn't you make it the Crossing Cup? But if you think about the fact that Nintendo at the time was really pushing the whole new thing for a few years between New Super Mario Bros., the new DS, new 3DS, etc., the moniker for the Animal Crossing game that released in 2012 was Animal Crossing New Leaf. Feels like you could have just kept the Leaf Cup as a Leaf Cup and had this one be the New Leaf Cup. That way both of them kind of match with their emblem, and then some casuals would just think, oh yeah, it's Nintendo, this is the New Leaf. While others who know the series can be like, yeah, it's the New Leaf Cup based off of Animal Crossing. But I will admit that while the Triforce emblem kind of sticks out a little bit, maybe because it's more recognizable to me as something that's not from the Mario series, I feel like even if someone didn't know what Animal Crossing was and they saw the leaf emblem, they'd still think it was part of the Mario series. The villagers and the environments of Animal Crossing probably fit in with Mario better than the Zelda series does. I mean, Link is no New Donk City type human, but if you put him next to Mario and put the Animal Crossing characters next to Mario, you can kind of understand why one of them fits in better in my opinion. And likewise, the Crossing Leaf looks like it would be a power-up more than the Triforce does. Plus, it's green. At this point, I'll take anything that's not yellow or gold. Here's my quick housekeeping reminder that I am going through every single Grand Prix in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and I'm scoring them based off of this score sheet you see on the screen, and the chart below it has the scores for all of the previous Grand Prix. I don't really have too many interesting tidbits to talk about in regards to the actual legacy of the Crossing Cup, seeing as how this is a new cup, but I will say that it continues on from the previous DLC Cup and contains 2 retro courses as well as 2 brand new courses. And likewise, the order of the tracks will be the 2 retro ones first, and the 2 new ones last, with obviously the Animal Crossing one being the big finale. I could be mistaken, but I think at least in these first 12 cups, the Crossing Cup, number 1, is one of the most popular, and number 2, it's one of the hardest to get 3 stars on. I don't remember if it was hard in 150cc, but I know that I've heard a lot of people complain about getting 200cc 3 stars. Come to think of it, I remember saying in one of my previous segments that I had 3-starred the tracks on Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U, but I'm actually not sure if I did it for the DLC courses. Maybe when I get some downtime, I'll actually give this a shot and just do one full video talking about how hard it is to get the 3 stars on everything. But that'll be a long time from now, because I have no idea when I'm going to have time to get 3 stars on everything. But to recenter our focus back on the actual analysis, the Crossing Cup consists of the GameCube's Baby Park, the Game Boy Advance's Cheese Land, a brand new course called the Wild Woods, and a brand new course called Animal Crossing, based off of Animal Crossing. I alluded to this back when I was discussing the Excitebike Stadium, but Baby Park is probably the most love it or hate it track in this game, I think. I can't think of anything else that would be S tier and F tier equally across the board. The difference between this one and something like Excitebike is, number 1, obviously everything is super flat. Number 2, it's a much smaller track, so much so that they actually increased the lap count to 7. And number 3, as you actually play this one, you're probably going to be lapping the people that are in last place. I think whether or not you love this track ultimately comes down to a couple of things. First one, obviously being how much you like just having a simple track with a couple turns that you're just drifting over and over again. And the other angle of it is how much you enjoy the mayhem. Keep in mind the GameCube version of this had something like 8 vehicles that you can race again, whereas over here it's 12 total. So it takes a track that was already pretty crazy and makes it crazier. So for me, Excitebike Arena was a 3-pointer. The reason for that was I felt the longer stretches and the ramps that you fly off of added an exciting element to the race. It felt like it could be fun and chaotic, but at the same time competitive. The problem is, I don't think Baby Park is that competitive. I think it can be a lot of fun, but it's like Mario Party 1 type of fun, where everyone's just screaming and crying and in pain because of how the game is just being terrible to them. It just feels like everything that happens in the course affects everybody. A bomb dropped in the road, a blue shell hits first place, and somehow 7th place is getting hit as well. There are scenarios where I can see myself enjoying this track, and in the past, I did enjoy this track. But that's no longer the case. And there's a chance that it might be because Excitebike is in the game, so I feel like that's just Baby Park but done better. But not only do I not enjoy this track, I actively go out of my way to avoid it. Unlike some of the previous tracks where I felt they were kind of lame, I don't think this one is lame, it's just not for me. And like I said, I think this is the most love it or hate it track in the game, so I imagine half of you will agree with me and half of you will say that I'm being crazy and harsh on it. But the reality is, if I was actually ranking all of these tracks based off of the amount of time I have played each one, this might be dead last. Because anytime I want to play this one, I'm just like, well, I might as well just go do Excitebike Arena. Okay, let's move on. Next, we have Cheeseland from the Game Boy Advance. This is one of those retro tracks that they took and gave it a complete overhaul, so it almost no longer resembles the old one. It's funny because this is a cheese level, but really it's a desert. If I'm not mistaken, this would be the third desert track that I covered, the first two being Bone Dry Dunes and Dry Dry Desert. Something cool about the map of this track, and I've actually noticed this in quite a few tracks, but I haven't brought it up, but in many of the retro tracks, they find a way to include a little 8 in there somewhere. And I think that 8 segment generally tends to get some kind of anti-gravity too. I also like how they play with the cheese theme. They add little holes in the ground so you can trick off of them. The track is pretty dynamic, it changes quite a bit as you go through it. There are random obstacles like chain chomps along your route sometimes. And I know I was kind of trying to push the discussion into thinking of this one as a desert course, but they do a really good job with the theming to make the cheese look kind of real. If I was to compare this to Bone Dry Dunes and Dry Dry Desert, the two tracks which I believe I gave 1 point to, Bone Dry Dunes I gave 1 point because I felt it was a little bit too complicated and not as exciting to play through because of that. Whereas Dry Dry Desert, I felt the opposite. It was almost a little too boring. I'd say this one sits right in the middle and it actually hits the sweet spot for me. I think it's a really good balance between fun and exciting and skill focused. Not that those things are mutually exclusive, but sometimes one ends up getting sacrificed for the other, like Baby Park. The funny thing is, I don't think I've actually played this track that much. It wasn't until I was playing it for this video and then going through the analysis after that I realized that this is actually a very good track. And I'm kind of glad that I figured that out because I have a very big feeling I will be picking this one a lot more going forward. So if we consider this one a desert track, currently this is the best desert track for me, as compared to what I've covered so far. Wildwoods is a little bit of a surprise. First off, random trivia, it's the only track that starts you off in anti-gravity, but isn't a full-on anti-gravity track. Secondly, they managed to kind of give you this Mario-themed course, but it also fits in with the Animal Crossing vibe. And third, the track evolves so much as you're going through it that it almost feels like it's just bits of pieces of different types of races thrown together. Like you're driving on a bridge across all these houses that are kind of canopies of some sort, and then you're going down a water slide that takes place inside of a tree. A fun little segment of speed bursting off of leaves off the ground. I feel like this one kind of got ignored because it's not based off of any character specifically, but this is a very underrated track in my opinion. Like whether you're basing it off of the aesthetic, the fun factor, how competitive it could be, I just think there's a lot going on here. It's very unique. I think this is another 3-pointer. Also, this might be a little bit of a reach, but it kind of reminds me of a modern day rendition of what the Woods levels in Super Mario World were. Part of me thinks that if they called this one Wiggler's Wild Woods or something and threw a Wiggler in there, it would be more memorable as a result. But yeah, this is a 3-pointer. And finally, we have Animal Crossing. And I think it randomly picks a version every time you play it, but you can cheese it by holding L or R or something like that. I don't remember exactly. I like the spring one because of the cherry blossom trees, and that's the only one I have footage of for this video. Honestly, if it didn't say Animal Crossing at the starting line, you could probably just slap anybody's name on this one and assume it's a Mario course. Similar to the Hyrule track, there are certain homages to the series as you go through it. They kept the coins, only this time now the counter in the bottom left corner is a money bag. Really, my only complaint about this track is that I feel like it is very underwhelming to be a final track in the Grand Prix. Obviously, the 4 different themes of it is very cool, but you don't experience that as you're going through the race. I personally would have preferred it if they just changed seasons with every lap. But that being said, they also made slight alterations to each of the tracks, not just through the aesthetics, but through the actual gameplay, like little bumps and ramps throughout. The track does contain a little bit too many straight moments for me, but they do complement it with various obstacles and making sure the road is bumpy, which helps keeping it from being too mundane. I don't feel as strongly about this as I did in Hyrule Castle because I think this one is better than Hyrule Castle, but I think the novelty of this track itself is the fact that it's an homage to Animal Crossing. And I think the whole seasonal thing helps a lot with the diversity of the course, but unfortunately when you're actually playing it, I don't think it really helps it in my scoring. This is a solid 1 for me, but it's also one that I think is very dear to the series and I'm glad it was added. I wouldn't go out of my way to play it. I think the second and third tracks in this Grand Prix are much better. Let's quickly tally everything up. GameCube's Baby Park gets 0 points because I never want to play it. The Game Boy Advance's Cheese Land got 3 points. Wild Woods, I think, might be the best track in this Grand Prix and needs a lot more praise than it gets. Also gets 3 points. And Animal Crossing managed to get 1 point. I don't think I ever took this Grand Prix too seriously because I always immediately think about Baby Park and the Animal Crossing track, but for me at least, those second two are sleepers, and I'm going to be playing them both a lot more in the near future. Diversity-wise, I think they do a good job with the visuals, keeping everything separate. I'm glad all of the tracks have a lot of twists and turns because if they didn't, Baby Park would really bring down the average if there was a second one that was a simple loop. Animal Crossing got a little bit close to that, but no, they did just enough to make it so that the full Grand Prix gets 3 points. But I will not be awarding the point for the difficulty curve because I think that the Animal Crossing track should have been second just after Baby Park. Which means the Crossing Cup has earned itself 10 points. I think that's fitting because if I was to put the Triforce Cup and the Crossing Cup head to head before I even started doing all this, I probably would have said I like them both the same. So I'm glad to see they got the same score. But let's just keep moving forward. Next we'll be covering the Bell Cup.